what's being cut has very little to do with what it says in the licenses and the promises that are made therein. So we have a series of cases going to try and bring that forward to the courts. The Walbran was one of them. We also have a case going out of the Sitica, a very, very important case that's coming up in the Court of Appeal this January, which deals with the issue of whether or not companies can build roads far up into wilderness areas that are proposed by environmentalists as parks when they haven't yet got the logging approvals. This is an old trick of companies have used both in Canada and the United States, is if you get the road in quick enough, then you can argue this isn't a wilderness area because it's got a road in it, and therefore you don't want to save that as part of the park. A fellow named Clinton Webb from Western Canada Wilderness Committee has just come out with a really important study out of Vancouver Island in which he analyzed every wilderness area on Vancouver Island, every unlogged watershed. 66% of those are scheduled for road building or logging in the next 5 years. The companies are moving into these areas as quickly as they can because they see the writing is on the wall. In some cases, they're moving in 20 years ahead of schedule from what they had originally scheduled, just because there's this perception that there's this park process going on.
Hi, who are you? Morning.
Hi, good morning.
What's your name?
My name is Jason Miller.
Oh.
Hi, yeah.
Gary Oliver.
Gary, hi.
What group do you represent?
We're here Friends of Carmana and Walbran. Yeah, which is a coalition of different environmental organizations and individuals concerned about the remaining old-growth forest wilderness on southern Vancouver Island.
Are you going to let us go through today?
What do you plan to do today?
Well, we have the legal right to be here to fall right away to start road building in our blocks.
You're planning to start road building today?
Well, we're planning
Do you
to
have
start
a
falling
road building
right.
permit with you?
Yes, we do.
Could we see it, please?
I'm not prepared to show it at this time, no.
You know, the NDP, the new government, has made some very good promises and some good programs, but they've also made some massive mistakes. And one of the mistakes they've made is they've drawn on a map all the park proposal areas, which may or may not become a park, but they didn't put logging moratoriums on them. They're still open to logging. So in effect, these park proposal areas have now become like great big targets.
Magnets. There's a mad dash to get in there before it...
Multinational magnets. They put a moratorium on logging on a portion of the Walbran Valley. And for the portion of the Walbran Valley that they put a moratorium on, we're very grateful until the court process can look at the Walbran Valley.
Now what's happening though in the Walbran Valley?
Well, they've left half of the Walbran Valley out, some of the most beautiful parts. The area around Fletcher Falls, which is just a magnificent place, and the whole one side of the Walbran. And what the companies have done is they've just concentrated, McMillan Blodell in particular has just concentrated his action leveling any part of the Walbran that's left out.
So they're highballing as fast
They're
as they
highballing. We have a research station in there that's just discovered 2 more marbled murrelet nests. This is an endangered species, and the companies are working overtime to knock down the habitat that this endangered species relies on.
The Walbran is getting hammered. There really hasn't been any slowdown in the logging of the Walbran. Basically, the companies have had to pull back a little bit, but they were given other cut blocks in the upper part of the Walbran. And the area that's under moratorium is really not slowing down their cut. And the problem is that then that whole area, that whole southern end of those tree farm licenses for Fletcher Challenge and for McMillan Blodell have been cut way faster than they can ever grow back. And it's mostly due to the companies' greed. They realize how valuable these trees are, and they realize the public wish that what should happen to these forests is changing very rapidly. And that people want to have some rainforest to show to their children. They want that nature to be there.
We're in the upper portion of the Carmana Valley, and we're in the only clear cut that is in the Carmana Valley watershed. A small portion of the watershed, it looks big here, but this is a small portion of the entire watershed, has been clear-cut logged right in the headwaters. When the government said that the lower portion of Carmana would become a provincial park, but the upper portion may be logged if studies showed that you could log it without harming the lower portion, the Wilderness Committee built a research station up here to start gathering information to make our case for total preservation. Out of this station, researchers from the University of Victoria discovered Canada's first marbled murrelet nest, which is a threatened species of bird. A lot of interesting discoveries were made from here, and I think it got a pretty big reputation. In the fall of last year, there was a blockade set up by some loggers, and nobody knows what happened, but the result was 1,000 feet of boardwalk was chainsawed, and our research camp was burned to the ground.
We've had 4 or 5 volunteer weekends this spring, and the boardwalk's all rebuilt. The research camp has been rebuilt, and it's been renamed Camp Phoenix in honor of rising from the ashes. The lower half of the valley is now in a Class A park, but the upper half of the valley is still it's still subject to logging, and the government and the logging company is saying that they can log the upper part of the valley carefully without damaging the lower part of the valley. And the key issue here is that we don't think that's true, that you can't log the upper part of the valley without affecting those spruce flats. That's the key rare ecosystem that we have in here that needs to be protected. And all the ecosystems are connected, so that what you do, particularly in the steep upper parts of the valley, is going to affect those spruce flats. It's a true rainforest with many layers of vegetation within it, and an enormous amount of biomass. It has the most plant matter per square meter, per hectare of any ecosystem on Earth. This soil here is very poor, and it's one of the greatest mysteries as to how such poor soil can support such an immense amount of living matter. And it's very important for us to understand that, so that we can use that knowledge in areas outside of wilderness areas. So there's, apart from things like recreation and retreat from the cities and so on, these old-growth forests have immense scientific value because of the secrets, the ecological and the scientific secrets that are locked up in them.
Good 150 feet up there.
You can break the canopy into